Hello and welcome from Trade Logic International, the logical solution for international trade. My name is Steve Fodor, and today I'll be talking about the additional duties that are being assessed on products of Chinese origin. Before we begin today, I'd like you to take a look at our disclaimer. The information that I'll be providing in this video is for informational purposes only. These are complex matters, and legal advice should be obtained from either a customs attorney, customs broker, or from a trade consultant. And we encourage you to do that. Just so you're aware, Trade Logic International is a trade consultant, and we'd be happy to answer any specific questions you might have. You can email us info@tradelogicintl.com, and we'll respond to you as quickly as possible. A question many may be asking today is, why am I being forced to pay additional duties on the products that I import from China? Some common questions I've heard are, well, I've never paid that much duty before, or I didn't realize that my products would be subject to these additional duties, or, well, I can only buy my product from a supplier in China, so what other options do I have? We're going to explore all of that today. So why are these additional tariffs being assessed? Section 301 of the Tariff Act of 1974 authorizes the U.S. Trade Representative, acting under orders of the President, to implement trade sanctions to penalize a country in order to help resolve trade disputes and to force that country to take steps to open their market to U.S. products and producers. The reason for the additional duties that we're seeing today is that China has been accused of the following: of placing restrictions on the foreign ownership of Chinese-based companies. China has also had stringent technology transfer rules in place requiring that U.S. companies surrender some of their technological data and information in order to access the Chinese market. China has also bought up some U.S. firms with the goal of obtaining the technology from those firms and using that to copy or reproduce those products at a lower cost. China has been accused of cyber spying, and China has been accused of unfair trade restrictions, especially the high duties that they place on many imported products. Because of these accusations against China, the U.S. Trade Representative has implemented two types of sanctions. First, and the one that we'll talk about today, are the additional duties on products that are imported from China. The second sanction that has been put into place is a restriction on Chinese investment in U.S. firms. Like many of us, when I first heard that the U.S. and China were in this trade battle and were negotiating back and forth about the access to each other's markets and the duty rates, my first thought was, well, we've heard all this before, and I'm sure it's just part of a negotiating strategy. Surely no one wants a trade war. Well, I think we've all been surprised by the fact that the negotiations didn't lead to any kind of compromise, and now we face a trade war. It already began on July 6th when the first additional duties were assessed on Chinese products, and already more sanctions are lined up and ready to go. So this appears to be a trade war. China has retaliated by placing tariffs on U.S. goods that are being imported to China, in particular targeting goods that will have the most bang for the buck. They've targeted food products. China imports a lot of food from the U.S., so that's been an area of sanctions on the part of the Chinese for U.S. goods being shipped there. At this point, I would say we're in a full-blown trade war. Round one of this trade war began on July 6th, and in that round, 25% additional duties were placed on a number of products imported from China. That list can be found on the USTR's website, or you can email us at the end of this presentation, info@tradelogicintl.com, and we'd be glad to provide that information for you. On List 1, the 25% additional duty began being assessed on July 6th, and some of the products included on the list of items subject to this additional duty includes machinery, electronics, and numerous other items. The list is quite long. Over 800 items are on that list. And again, we can provide you with a copy of the list if you would request that from us. Well, round one was pretty ugly, especially for those companies that are now paying that 25% additional duty. But round two could begin any day now. A second list, a little bit smaller than that first list issued in round one, has been issued, it's been reviewed, and it is ready for implementation at the President's order. That could happen any day now. By the time you hear this presentation, round two could already be in effect. We don't really know. We do know that there is some talk of negotiations that would hopefully put an end to this trade war. However, as of today, those negotiations haven't produced any results. The items on List 2 would also receive a 25% additional duty. And again, the timing of this is unknown, but it could happen any day now. Some of the products on List 2 include petroleum-based products, various chemical products, iron and steel products, and even more machinery and electronics are covered on List 2. Again, send us an email. We'll send you List 2 so you can take a look at that and review your tariff classifications. Round 3 of the trade war has already been announced, and that is a much longer list of products that will receive an additional 10% duty when they're imported from China. That list is 205 pages long, and again, we can send you a PDF copy for your review. Once round 3 is fully implemented, over 50% of all products imported from China will be subject to additional duties. Currently, the list provided in round 3 is undergoing public comment and hearings. If you'd like to send your comments to the U.S. Trade Representative's office, you must do so by no later than August 17th, and hearings will be held open to the public in Washington, D.C. between August 20th and August 23rd. This is a great opportunity for importers to have their input heard during these hearings and hopefully will influence the final list that will be issued before any additional duties on the products on List 3 are implemented. This list is wide-ranging. It covers practically every type of product you can imagine. I've listed a few here: food, minerals, chemicals, plastic and rubber products, luggage, textiles, hats, flooring and carpet, machinery, even more machinery, and even more electronics, and furniture and home decor items. It's a wide-ranging list. Again, it's 205 pages long currently. If you want to put your 2 cents worth in and hopefully have an impact on the final list, the time to do so is limited. Again, August 17th is the final day that they'll accept any public comments. If you'd like to send in a public comment, please contact us, info@tradelogicintl.com, and we'll send you the instructions from the U.S. Trade Representative's office telling you the steps in that process. It's an electronic comment portal that you can send those comments in through, and we'll be glad to share that information for you. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, if all 3 rounds of sanctions take effect, they will impact more than 50% of all the products imported from China. Last year, over $500 billion of products were imported from China. So this will be a huge impact on U.S. consumers, U.S. corporations and companies, and just the economy in general. The really bad news is that if negotiations don't yield some sort of agreement, there is talk that a fourth round of sanctions will take effect, and that would cover practically every product imported from China. We're all hopeful we don't get to that point, but that is a threat that is there right now. Well, nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. Like they say, don't shoot the messenger. So I've given you a lot of bad news in this presentation. So what I want to talk about for the remainder of the presentation is about steps you can take to protect your company and the products that you import from China. Here's a few things that you can do. If your products are on list number 1, the one that has already been implemented and imported products are already facing a 25% duty, you can consider filing an exclusion request with the U.S. Trade Representative's Office. The deadline to do so is October 9th. If your products are on list 2, that's the second list, 25% duty being threatened that could take effect any day. At this point, there is nothing you can do other than wait for that list to be implemented. Once it is implemented, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office should give instructions how to file for a product exclusion. And finally, if your lists are on on list 3, if your products are on list 3, that's the list that will have 10% duties, you can request to testify at the hearings in Washington, D.C. They're public hearings held August 20th through the 23rd. The deadline to request the opportunity to testify is July 27th. You can also submit written comments, as I spoke about a moment ago, and the deadline to do that is August 17th. Again, reach out to us, info@tradelogic.com, for any further information regarding the steps that you can take. One of the most important steps that an importer can take and should take right now is to review the harmonized tariff classification on their imported products to make sure that the HTS classification number they're using is correct. The HTS classification number is going to determine whether your product is on list 1, list 2, list 3, or not subject to these additional duties at all. So make sure your product is classified correctly. The other option, and this one is a bit more costly and time consuming, is that importers may want to start looking for suppliers in countries other than China. These additional duties only apply to imports from China. So if you found a supplier in another foreign country, you would not be subject to these additional duties. That's another step that you can take. Well, I hate to even have to say these things, but I feel it would be negligent not to. Don't do these things. Don't simply pick an HTS classification number just because it's not on one of the 3 lists. If you misclassify your product, that can cause you all kinds of problems with U.S. Customs. And if you do it intentionally, it can even be considered fraud, and that can be prosecuted both civilly through penalties and fines, but it also can be processed criminally, and we don't want to see anyone take that step. Another dangerous step that some companies might be tempted to do is to misdeclare the origin of their products. You might even have a supplier who, kind of says, well, we can help you around this, and then offer possibly to move their goods to another country, relabel them, and then ship them to you. All I'm going to say is don't do it. Don't do it. The penalties for fraud are severe. Financial penalties, and importers have actually been put in jail for making fraudulent declarations. So don't do it. It's just not worth the risk. All right, we've covered quite a bit of ground here. Let me say this. Trade Logic can help you. We're here to review your HTS classification numbers and make sure that they're correct. By doing that, we'll make sure you're paying the right amount of duty and that you're only going to pay the additional duty if those additional duties actually apply to your product. We can even help you review the trade sanctions list and see if they apply to the products that you import. Finally, if you need to file an exclusion request, I would strongly recommend that you get an attorney that's experienced in customs law to assist you in that process. Those attorneys are not cheap, but it's a good investment in these exclusion requests. I would not want a customs broker or a person that doesn't have the right experience to file that request because it would likely be denied. Get an experienced attorney. And again, TradeLogic can help you find an attorney that can help you. We know a number of good, experienced customs attorneys who can help. You can reach us, info@tradelogicintl.com, or call me at 678-426-5930. We're here to help. I hope you found this little presentation to be beneficial. And as always, please check our website for more information at www.tradelogicintl.com. Thank you and have a great day.